All right. Hi, all. How are you? I see people filing in from the waiting room to our third Women's Empowerment Lunch and Learn session. Thank you so much for being with us today. We are so pleased that you've made this a priority, and many of you are back again, our return customers for our third call here with the Adelante Foundation in Honduras. This call feels incredibly important and really somewhat urgent. There's been a lot of incredibly important news coming out of Honduras, and this feels like the absolute best way to share with you the impact that your generous support has for women in Honduras. So we're so thrilled to be joined by Tony Stone, who is the founder of Adelante Foundation, and Janet Lautenberger, who is a member of their board of directors, who you will hear from shortly. These calls are really designed to keep you up to date, as you know, with the challenges that the women that you so generously support are facing, particularly over these last 12 months with the pandemic. And now as we move into a new stage of sort of pandemic recovery, how the women are going to approach the challenges that they continue to face with the support of our wonderful partners. So we will continue to host these calls in the weeks ahead. And for those of you who are able to join us, please mark your calendars for the next call, which will be Wednesday, April 13th, and that will be featuring our partner, Proyecto Matria in Puerto Rico. So our goal is to make these calls as interactive as possible. And so as we've done in the last two, we'll be saving the last 15 minutes or so of the call for you to ask questions directly of Tony and of Janet. So as we go along, you're going to be learning a lot of information about what's happening in Honduras. Please feel free to share your questions in the chat at any time, and then we'll go back and get to them. And if you prefer to hang on to them, then when we get to it, you can do the hand raise and you can ask your questions directly. So with that, I would like to introduce two wonderful women who are with us today, Ria Coleman and Louisa Cano. And Ria, who's known to many of you, is the immediate past president of Women's Empowerment. And she has been serving graciously as the interim liaison to Adelante for Women's Empowerment. She has expertise in poverty alleviation. She is a known advocate for the empowerment of women and very involved in San Diego on behalf of empowering women. She's a global traveler and has been on a number of site visits for Women's Empowerment, including to Honduras. And Louisa Cano, who joins us today, is a new volunteer with WE, who's already having an impact, and we're so thrilled to have found her. So she is starting her new role with us today as our liaison to Adelante. So they are going to share some information with you, some background on the partnership shortly. So we've got 45 informative minutes ahead. Thank you for keeping yourselves on mute as we go through the program. And as I say, we'll get to your questions at the end. So with that, Ria and Louisa.
Thanks, Paige. WE's partnership with Adelante began in 2007. And since then, WE has provided over $335,000 to Adelante to empower the women of Honduras to take control of their lives. Most of these funds have been used for group loans and business education. Adelante has 5 local branches in Honduras, located in the most economically challenged areas of a country with widespread poverty. As of 2016, over 66% of the population of Honduras was living in poverty, defined as less than $3.80 US per day. In rural areas, which is mostly where Adelante works, approximately 1 in 5 Hondurans live in extreme poverty, less than $1.90 per day, according to the World Bank. Unemployment and underemployment are endemic, and stood at about 40% as of 2015. And rates of violence are among the highest in Latin America. And of course, the pandemic has made everything worse. Louisa will fill us in.
Thank you, Ria. As is true with all of WE's partners, the lockdowns have resulted in high rates of business failures, economic dislocation, harming over 800 of Adelante client businesses. But the pandemic is only one of the catastrophic events Honduras experienced in 2020. In November, it was hit by two devastating back-to-back hurricanes that left thousands of people homeless and destroyed unaccounted businesses, including those of about 325 Adelante clients. Most of these people are still unable to rebuild. Additionally, the hurricanes destroyed roads, bridges, which have not been repaired, creating transportation and logistic problems for over 1,600 of Adelante clients who cannot get much needed supplies or get their products to market. Also, I think it's important to note that the famine early warning system has projected that food insecurity will ramp up in Honduras from now until early August or September. Faced with these cascade of challenges, Adelante has had to be very creative in modifying their programs to help the women they serve, the poorest of the poor, often clients that most MFIs won't accept. Now, Paige will show us a brief video and introduce our partners at Adelante.
Thank you, Louisa and Ria. As I mentioned, we have Tony Stone and Janet Lautenberger with us. Tony is the founder and director of Adelante. He grew up in Honduras and, as I understand it, came to the US to attend Stanford University and worked in the aerospace industry for a number of years prior to returning to Honduras to make a profound difference in the life of women suffering in his home country. And together with Janet, he has touched the lives of thousands of women, and we're so pleased to be partnered with them now since 2007. Janet, as I say, is a member of the board of directors and lives in the Bay Area, where she is in advertising sales and is a volunteer and community advocate. And together with the team at Adelante, they do wonderful work, which we're so proud to bring to you. And before I turn it over to them, we're actually going to share a video with you that was created by Adelante together with Rotary, that is a wonderful funder of microcredit loans, that will kind of take us on a little journey to Honduras and bring the work and some of the women to life for us. So fingers crossed for no glitches. Here we go.
My name is Gina Caputiti, and I'm the International Development Coordinator for Adelante Foundation. These loans are based on the group loan methodology, meaning that the women are each other's collateral. When you're living under difficult situations all your life, even though it's not pleasant, you get used to it. And having to take the next step and believe in yourself, that can take a lot of strength. When women start with Adelante, they're often shocked that an organization is willing to loan to them. The credit officers meet with their assemblies so that they can give them educational lessons, and also so that the women can report on their loan repayments. The credit officers are out in the field every single day, Monday through Friday, sometimes even Saturdays and Sundays, and are typically from the areas that they work in. One of the first clients that I met is Doña Juana, who invests her loans in making breads. a loan of down to $25 in our program can mean that they're able to double or triple their business size. That loan, she's going to finally be able to build a kitchen. Our goal is for our clients to have sustainable businesses that they can manage and are also able to continue to learn. And I've always found that the women who have been with us for a longer period of time have this radiance, have this great amount of confidence. They can see just the huge difference that has been made in that woman's life.
All right. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Tony and Janet.
Thank you. And thanks for sharing that video. I think it really depicted quite well what it takes to get out to some of the areas that we serve. It's pretty far out there. Thank you for having us here. This is so great. And I saw some of your other videos as well. I did a video of the last week's event, and it's really great to see what you all do and the extent of it. Tony, I'm going to let you start with the history since you founded the organization. You're the expert, and do you want to tell the story of the founding?
Sure. Thank you, Janet, and thank you, everybody. It's wonderful to be here, and I just cannot say thank you enough for the long-term and ongoing partnership that we have had with WE. It has been so rewarding for us. Adelante started because of Hurricane Mitch, Mitch's devastation. It was one of the strongest hurricanes in recorded history that hit Central America and created untold devastation in the country, after which there was a lot of interest in figuring out how we could help. I was watching the devastation of the hurricane along with many other people, hoping that my parents would be okay, and they were, thankfully, but a lot of other people were not. The result of the hurricane was basically making a poor population even poorer and more destitute. And we wanted to figure out, with some of our original partners, in particular, one of our original founding members, Ed Cohen, how we could help. So I went to Honduras and I discovered microfinance. I'd never heard of it before. And there was a Finca program that was doing microfinance. And I interviewed 20 executive directors of different organizations, many of them microfinance organizations. And all the microfinance organizations said, don't give money away because it creates paternalism, and we don't want that. And make sure that you work with businesses that are already established in rural area, in urban areas, and don't work with the poorest of the poor. So we decided to do exactly the opposite of that recommendation, and work with the poorest in rural areas that had never had a business before. And of course, right from the beginning, we figured out that we needed to do things differently. Next slide. So when we started, we were very fortunate. I basically knew I had no idea what I was doing. And so I was only the glue for trying to bring expertise together to create a program that could help improve the standard of living of very poor families. And we discovered Grameen, and that's where I started to learn a little bit more about microfinance. They flew me to Bangladesh. I was fortunate to meet Professor Yunus, which was fantastic. And that's how we started. We started with solidarity group loans, as were described in the video. And when our first loan started paying back, I almost couldn't believe it. But it was wonderful. But we knew that the situation of poverty was not going to be solved only through access to capital. It's a very important piece, but education, we knew from the beginning, was also important. To be able to have the vision and the confidence, if you're an extremely poor person and you've never, no one's ever basically taken a chance on you, you're starting with problems of self-esteem, limited by problems of self-esteem and other issues that are around you. So in the beginning, We did health, human rights education, and of course, business development education. And we implemented a poverty measurement tool, which has since evolved, and we've applied the probability out of poverty index, which was developed by Grameen. So that's how we started. We quickly grew to a few thousand borrowers, and it started to become successful. Our mission has not changed too much, has become a bit more specific. It's to empower women with the least economic opportunity to achieve economic self-sufficiency. And since then, really in our first decade, we started to evolve a few new products. We had a graduate loan program, so where we graduate women from a solidarity group loan to a more individual style loan, depending on their needs. They had different needs. And then we started doing also home improvement loans, which have been very popular and have helped people, put a roof over their heads, a better roof over their heads, a concrete floor and walls, expand some rooms, create a kitchen and bathrooms. We've had, of course, a number of challenges along the way. In particular, our software has always been a challenge. We've implemented at least half a dozen different software solutions. And most recently, that I'll talk about in a little bit, is the software that we developed in-house because we really couldn't find anything that would suit our purposes. In 2009, we had a crisis that was similar to Grameen. When Grameen had a phase that they went from Grameen 1 to Grameen 2, they went from a very rigid microfinance methodology to a more flexible one. And a similar thing happened to us after almost a decade of experience. And one of the most revelatory aspects of what happened then is that after doing microfinance for 9 years, we realized that borrowers that didn't repay were not repaying because they didn't want to repay. They were not repaying because they couldn't repay. And so that represented, close to 98% of borrowers that had problems. I mean, you're talking about people that live in conditions, families that live in conditions of extreme poverty. And for them to start a business and to be successful involves a whole set of challenges and tools that they need in order to be able to better be prepared to do this and be successful. And so we changed, philosophically, we changed at that point. And we realized that if we were to really help people, we had to have a real connection with them and a real conversation with them and a real understanding about what their challenges were and start to become less rigid and more individualized. And that's basically what we started to do. Next slide.
Hey, Tony, can I just throw in a few examples of some of the businesses that we work with and some of the businesses that the women start?
Please.
Every year we do a board meeting down in Honduras. The whole board goes down and we always get out in the field and visit with the women who we lend to, so we can see firsthand what's happening. And it's so great to see. It's amazing to see. The businesses can be as very simple as a storefront out in front of their home. That's set up very, just basic necessities of life. One woman we visited had the tamale business, and we loaned her money so she could buy the ingredients and make tamales and take them into town and literally just sell them that way. One of my favorite stories was a woman who we loaned her money to go buy a sewing machine and fabric, and she brought them back to her house and she made skirts and tops and sold them in town and really grew her business. And Tony, I think she was one that was able to get a home improvement loan because she had grown her business enough and borrowed with us long enough that we ended up getting her a home improvement loan and got running water into her house. I mean, that's an amazing thing for people when they transition from no running water to running water. It's great. Those are the kind of businesses that we loan to. And one of the most shocking things for me was when I heard about the payback rate of these women. Correct me if I'm wrong, but for a long time, it was around 93% of the women paid back their loans. And I think in the US, for regular loans in the US, it's something like 65. I might have the numbers a little bit off, but for years and years, that was the payback rate. And it so shocked me. But this is why we lend to women and lend in solidarity groups, because of the support And because women, are diligent and paid back the loans. It was really surprising to me at that point. So I just wanted to add that. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Janet. All of our borrower stories are so phenomenal and inspiring, to be honest. I stepped away from Adelante to work as an engineer again, and came back in 2018 because we had been a little bit stagnant, and the world of microfinance in Latin America has changed a bit. There's a lot more players with a lot more offerings. Our solidarity group model, which is our base model, is great for getting started. But what we would do is we were basically an incubator for very poor borrowers to be able to get started, and then they would get pilfered off by other microfinance organizations that would give them other offerings. That was one of the issues, and so we want to grow because we want to impact more needy families, of course. And I came back to Adelante first in a volunteer basis to develop their strategic plan. And I have experience as an engineer in strategic plans and project management and implementation and things like this. So I felt I could help. Once I developed the plan, then the question was, well, how are we going to implement the plan? So that's when I stepped back in as interim executive director. In March, this month will be 2 years exactly that I've been back involved. And the idea is simply to try and have us grow, be more competitive, and create a succession plan, at the management level. And that's what we've done. It's been a challenging year. Obviously, no one really could have prepared for this. And one of the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic has been that a lot of our plans have had to be put on hold because we've gone from a growth phase and a development phase into really survival mode to a certain extent, as have many of our borrowers. Well over 50%. We've estimated that originally 70% of our borrowers were affected economically. Their businesses dropped. There was a few that were essential businesses, but 50% of our borrowers' businesses had to close, and we had to decide what we were going to do. And so we rolled up our sleeves and we started to work with them remotely. We started to call all of our borrowers. We created survey forms in order to determine what each individual's borrower situation was and start to address their issues on a one-by-one basis. We were lucky that we had developed our own in-house software. It couldn't have come at a better time because it only took us about a month to be able to adapt the software that we had. But basically what our software does, it's a software and application suite that runs completely on your smartphone. And so we've been able to eliminate all paperwork in the field and do everything on smartphones. So all loan applications and evaluations and surveys and loan assessments, as well as our education program, now runs through our software application suite. And we were able to modify it so that we could work 100% virtually with borrowers without having to go out and visit them, those that we could contact. Of course, there was a percentage, about 20-25% of our borrowers that we were not able to contact, either because they did not have phones or they were outside of coverage areas. But this was a godsend for us. Just so happened that our software was in the right time and the right place. I'll take the next slide. We have a borrower story for you about Doña Luis, I believe. And she, are we going to watch this one? Paige?
You know what? I don't believe so. If you could tell her story, this video didn't load. So
okay, no problem.
Okay.
We were scrambling to try and get this dubbed in English at the last minute, and I think some things fell through the cracks. So I apologize for that. But she's an example of one of the women that was affected by the hurricanes. We were just starting to come back and recovering from the pandemic. The economy was slightly opening up, we had some allowances as long as we used proper PPE to go out into the field and start to meet face to face with our borrowers. Of course, we did this behind their front fence, definitely a 2-meter distance. But the face-to-face interaction is crucial for us to be able to determine how they're doing. When this happened, this started to happen in September, October. And then in November, we had 2 hurricanes, literally 2 weeks apart, that went exactly almost through the same area of Honduras and just devastated parts of the country with flooding. And her story is very similar to the story of 326 borrowers that we've had displaced. Some of them are still displaced from their homes. And she recalls the fact that she had to flee her home the first time with her family and how frightening that was, and having to come back and clean up, only to have that happen 2 weeks later again. And it's heart-wrenching to hear her story. She talks about how, for the second time, the psychological trauma of her having to leave again was almost too much. She could not bring herself to leave her home. And when she finally left her home, the water was up to her chest. And her son was pleading with her to get out of the house, and she just did not want to do it. And returning to her home, a few days after the hurricane, basically a week after the floodwaters had receded, she saw the devastation, and expresses that most of her belongings were gone or ruined. Her fridge was gone, her stove was gone, everything that had to do with her business was gone. And she had to do a lot of soul searching, and depended on her friends and Adelante circle of other borrowers in order to be able to get the strength to be able to rebuild. And we have helped her with that. So we work with her. We've restructured the loan that she had. We've given her some refinancing to be able to start again. I mean, you cannot expect a borrower to repay you if their business has disappeared. And so we have found funds to be able to provide her what she needs to be able to start her business again. And that is her story, as well as the story of hundreds of other women in this area. Today, Adelante has lost a few borrowers because of the pandemic. We're at around 5,500 borrowers over the course of the years. And thanks so much to women's empowerment, we've been able to help 150,000 very extremely poor families improve their standard of living. As I mentioned, of course, our credit has been affected, but we had a portfolio at risk over 30 days, which is a standard measurement in the industry. It means how much of your portfolio is in arrears for all of your borrowers that's in arrears over 30 days. And this is what we always measure. And normally, as Janet mentioned, our portfolio in arrears would be around 5 or 6%. But due to the pandemic, it jumped up to 50%, and we were able to bring that down to about 32% before the hurricanes, and then it jumped back up, and now we've been able to bring it down again to 26%. And that is all due to the effort of restructuring loans of businesses and women that have been affected. And it's a very important process for us to be able to reach out and communicate frequently with our borrowers, because we're not a microfinance organization that's really interested in making a lot of money. We just want to be sustainable, and what we really are looking for is improving people's well-being. And so we need to restructure loans, and we need to have them start their businesses again, so that they can get back on their feet and have an income that will sustain them. We have recently been able to recover our sustainability rate, and we maintain an active loan pool, so you have an idea of $1.8 million. I'll take the next slide. So our plan has evolved. This last year certainly has had us rethink a lot of things. we were concerned about our educational component, our business education component. Over the years, we started to drop the healthcare component of our education because other players came into the field that were doing that better than we were. We had started to do it just because there was no one else that was, but other players have come in, and so we partner with them, and we reference them to our borrowers so that they can get that assistance. We have modified what we've done because we realized that working virtually is possible. And in a way, it's become the new norm. So we've created a portal called EVA, which is basically Eve in Spanish. And it's our virtual education portal. And it is one of our top priorities right now is launching our virtual staff training modules, and then also our virtual borrower education modules. The first one of which is a pre-credit module, is going to be launched in May. And we also have more additional business development modules, which is basically the content that we've been doing for years, just that we want to offer it virtually. And by offering it virtually, we realize that there's a segment of the population that needs assistance in order to be able to make sure that they either have smartphones, have connectivity, know how to use them. Maybe that we involve family members to help them with this. The importance is that people can learn and understand how they can grow a business and improve their standard of living. We want to have advanced business education modules with a diploma, some trade schools that are virtual as well, and an agricultural portal for learning how to grow everything from cacao to coffee, sugarcane, and beans, right? We continue to expand our credit offerings in home improvement and sanitation loans. We have partnered with Water for People that taught us how important it was to have an in-house bathroom facility. And we have relaunched our agricultural loans based on the experience that we've had with TechnoServe that we partner with as well. Next slide. And I just want to say thank you so much for the long-term partnership that we've had. And I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Tony. We really want to make sure we leave some time for questions from our participants here. So I think I have a question that we actually received during the call, and Janet, it kind of dovetails on what you mentioned about the high repayment rates that you see among your women borrowers. You know, this is something we see across our partnerships, that women are incredibly reliable borrowers and they work so hard to pay back. And so the question is, what it is that you see over kind of the lifetime of working with a client. So you have a client who receives an initial loan, maybe launches a business. If you could describe this evolution of a woman once she receives a second and a third loan, and kind of the role she can play in her community and how things change for her.
Tony, want to take that?
Sure. Oh, am I taking it?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have seen the most.
You know, it's all over the map, but there are some things that are fairly consistent. We see that women take out loans in cycles, and what we've learned is that we're now promoting a new method of analyzing and providing loans. We want to see a stair-step approach to growing a business. So a lot of other microfinance organizations basically work like a typical bank. They try, and their goal is to try and get as much capital out there in as few hands as possible, which makes it the easiest to basically manage, right? We're doing the opposite. We only want to provide borrowers as much money as they need to have a loan that is fully invested in a business, and so fully creates returns and doesn't have any excess money that is a burden to them. So this is in order to be able to assure that we don't create over indebtedness and an additional burden in the form of additional interest and capital that has to be paid back, that is not being productively invested in an income generating activity. And so that's what we've seen that has been very important and what has been guiding us in the last few years and what we focus on. And the way to do that is through education, through really teaching borrowers how to analyze a loan, how to analyze their interest rate, what their cost burden is when they take out a loan, and what the stair-step approach to building a business is. You normally, giving a woman 50,000 lempiras, which is $2,000, is not really productive to her if she's never had a loan before and doesn't have a business. You know, she needs a stair-step approach and some education on how to do that. And so what we do is we create a line of credit for them. We basically have a menu now through our application suite that allows that. So what happens with them typically in their businesses and their loans? It takes time. It takes time like any business. And we see that they fight hard and struggle hard and create a market for themselves and build their customer base. And over time, they start to actually generate enough income to make a difference in their standard of living. And that's what we want.
I
And
just
we
want to
analyze that with our PPI.
I want to add one thing to that, that I noticed. It was very interesting in the assemblies, or when we go out into the field and see the women building their businesses, you know, the children are everywhere. The children will sit at the assemblies and watch the educational modules. You know, they're watching, and it really, really matters. You know, it's another generation that's learning along with their mothers, and hopefully it has influence on them when they, you know, decide that they want to build a business, or, you know, it's motivational to the children to get education and to stay in school, and to, you know, they're learning a little bit how to build a business as well, which is great to see. I just want to make one more point too, because, you know, especially the last few years, our migrant situation at the US border has been so top of mind, as everybody knows. So, I mean, Tony, especially growing up in Honduras, but when I see that situation, it's motivational for me to want to help the situation in Honduras. These people don't want to leave, you know, Honduras. They don't want to leave their home country. They don't want to take that trek. And it's pure desperation that, as we all know, that they're having to do that and come north, and having a horrible situation at the border. So we're motivated to keep these people in their home country with their family, you know, and build a life for themselves that works. And we're also hoping that the current administration is going to add a little bit more assistance to what's happening in Central America in order for people to build their life there and not come north.
Thank you so much for adding that, because that addresses another question that we had, and I know that that's been top of mind for many of us as we see what's going on at the border and continue to hear about more and more migrants coming there with hopes of coming to the US to get out of such desperate situations. So that's such an important part of what you do and what Women's Empowerment does, is try to help women create the situation so that they can stay and thrive in their homes. We have another question from Linda Weber. Hi, Linda, that I think people are probably very curious about, which is about the situation for the COVID vaccine. And will health partners be getting the vaccine to Adelante to participate, kind of where that stands right now?
The Honduran government is not always the most reactive or proactive in anything. And so the rhetoric that floats around right now is somewhat unreliable. The last that we've heard is that what's coming in is the Sputnik vaccine, which people obviously are a bit skeptical of taking. So that's where we're at now. There's some talk about the Moderna vaccine being able to come in, but so far there's only been a very few vaccines that come into the country, relatively a few thousands. We hope that that's going to ramp up, and that's all I can tell you.
Thank you. We have another question from WE board member Christy Hendrickson about the literacy rate among the population that you work with, and how that might be impacting the move toward the online communications you have among the borrowers.
Sure. Literacy rate is very important. The last figures that I have, which are a couple years old, to be honest, and they depend greatly on the region. but the literacy rate is between 50 to 75% in the rural regions in which we work. We have tended to work previously with a bit of more older population, and now in the last couple of years we're working with younger population. We find that the literacy rate closer to urban areas is greater, and then the further rural you go, it tends to drop off. But it's important because it influences how they can consume our education. And so it's very important for us not to leave anybody out. We don't want to discriminate. We don't discriminate borrowers because of their poverty level. Obviously, we want to work with the absolute poorest of the poor, if possible. We don't discriminate because of their literacy rate. We don't discriminate because they have a bad credit rating or any of those things. To us, anybody that needs help to improve their standard of living, we're there for them.
Excellent. So if folks have questions, I'm going to call on our dear friend, Jose Nuncio. He had sent some questions in advance, and I wonder, Jose, I don't know if you have your speaker on there, but if you want to ask a couple questions. Jose is our former liaison to Adelante for Women's Empowerment and longtime friend and volunteer.
Thank you, Paige, and thank you, Tony and Janet. It's just want to thank you for your endless hours, devoted to your mission. And I saw your video, and I actually recognized some of the clients, so it's really moving to see them. Also recognize Gina. I hope she's doing great because she was an amazing person. Anyway, my question to you is, so you've talked a little bit about the client, but I was actually interested in how is the Adelante staff dealing with all of these challenges on top of the regular challenges like lack of security and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, 2 hurricanes, COVID, I mean, that's a lot. How are they doing? And how, what's being done to support them so that they can in turn support the clients?
Thank you, Jose Angel, and it's good to see you. Janet just responded. Gina is actually on our board now. She's our latest board addition, and we're so happy to have her. She's fantastic. How is the staff doing? Well, Hondurans are very resilient because we have to be. And so things are tough, and there's been some fatigue. We have managed to keep morale up. I think due to the nature of the fact that we have worked in a developing country for so long, that we do have a bit of a tough skin. Right now, as a matter of fact, our new general manager, Gabriela Puerto, is recovering from COVID. And so since she got COVID, we were getting together in a limited basis in the head office, and now we've closed that down and we're completely remotely until we make sure that everyone's get tested and recovers from COVID. But we've learned to be able to rely on our staff to do their work without having to come into the office. And so it's really been fantastic. We wouldn't be able to do it without the staff that we have because they're incredible. And I also have to, again, mention that our software has really enabled us. That's been a tool that's really enabled us to be able to do that. It does everything from geographical tracking to a smart calendar application to help design what the route should be for our borrower, for our staff and stuff like that. So they're doing as best as we can. We realize that this is a global pandemic and a global problem. So one thing that we have recognized and feel early on in the pandemic actually is an incredible sense of gratitude that we're still able to operate and still able to help people in light of, all of the suffering that's going on. So.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you for all that information and obviously for everything that you do. And it's very interesting to hear how your incredible timing you had with implementing the new software program was so good so that you would be able to stay in touch with your borrowers and the clients through this super difficult last 12 months. We are at 12:45, and so I want to respect the time limit and thank all of you for being here. Thank you to Tony and to Janet for making time to be with us today and for sharing this first person information with all of our folks. I see so many people on this call today who've actually been to Honduras and been on our site visits. And yeah, actually, let's get a raise of hands. I know we have Kathleen, obviously Debbie, and
Great.
Ria, and many of you. And you are the women's empowerment community. We are incredibly grateful to you. You all know that it is your support that makes it possible for us to have incredible partners like Adelante, and we're supported 100% by your generosity, and we are grateful for everything that you do, particularly now that our already struggling women are struggling that much more. So we can't let you go without asking you again to keep us in mind and know that we will always gratefully accept your support and ensure that it goes to the valuable work you've been hearing about today and through these calls. So with enormous thanks to everybody and tons of gratitude, stay well, take good care, keep getting vaccinated, and plan to join us on the 13th to hear a report from Puerto Rico. Thank you, Tony, Janet, and everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
See you all soon. Be well.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you. Be well.
Thank you.